Let us continue with our lesson, and let's go and create a view model for our register and login. So I think first of all we'll work with our register. So for that, let's go to the view model over here, and I'll just create a new package, and I'll just call it as a auth. And inside this auth, we'll create a view model for our register. So just select the class, and we'll call it as I think that's okay. Let me cancel this first, and let's go to the UI and let's check the package name. It's a login activity. So we'll just call it as a login activity, or we just call it the login view model. So let's go over here and just create a new Kotlin class and call it as a login view model. And another one, we'll create a two. So that should be of a Kotlin class, and let's create a register view model. So we have added a auth package and added a two class over here, login view model and a register view model. So let's work with the register view model first. And for that, we will have to implement a view model. So if you go over here, we have a view model. We have to implement a view model which is of our Android X lifecycle service. So from here we'll make use of a view model, and let's provide a constructor for a view model. Now since we have implemented a view model or extended a view model over here inside this view model, now what we have to do is we need to prepare a data for our UI. So basically the view model is a place where we will be preparing all of our required data for our UI. So let's say we want to log in, or you want to register, or you want to get a user detail. So all of these data should be prepared in our view model, and then we show up in our UI. So on the previous lesson, we have already created a repositories where it will be able to find where to get the data. So repositories is like a place where it will decide from where to get the data, and the view model is the place where we prepare to get the data. So it's where we are going to get the data for our UI. So we get the data from we send the request to the repositories, and repositories will get the data and send back to the view model. And after the view model gets the data, and it will populate in our UI. So first of all, thing that let's create a constant variable. So I will just say as a companion object, and inside this companion object I will create a constant variable of our tag, which is let's say a register view model, the tag name. And after that, let's create a variable of a private variable of we need a network service. So a var or a val of our network service, and that should be of a network service. We cannot directly create the network service over here, because if you go to the network service, this is a network service. In order to create this network service, we have to first create a instance of our retrofit. So whenever we create a retrofit instance, we are passing that network service. So in order to get the network service, we have to create this retrofit instance first. So for that, what we will do is we will just go back over here, and instead of directly creating a network service which is of interface, we have to create a networking which will return our network service using a retrofit. So for that, we'll call networking over here dot create, and when we create it, we need to pass a base URL. The base URL we can get from our build config. So build config, make sure you use a to do app build config dot and base URL. So this build config base URL is coming from our Gradle build that we have set over here, the base URL. And okay, so we have already set that one. And the next step is to create a, let's say, a private variable of our repository. REPO should be of a registr register repository. So register repository, where is this one? Register repository is equals to registr register repositories, and inside this repository we need to pass the network service, and the network service is we have created from here. So in order to create a network service instance, we have to make use of a networking.create, which will create for us the networking service using the retrofit. So we are passing and returning a networking service over here. And we have make use in our view model. And the next step is to create a function that will retrieve the data for or the post the data. So for that, we'll say a function of a register, sorry, should be of a register. And when we call this function register, if we go to the repository, we have to pass a request, register request. So for that, we'll just say as a register request, and we should return the live data. So how to return a live data? We can just say live data. So if you check the live data, we have a suspend function of a live data scope, which means that Kotlin coroutine has a direct support with a live data. So whenever we want to get live data from Kotlin coroutine, we can make use of this live data, and this live data will return a live data from our Kotlin coroutine scope. So if you take a note, this is a suspend function, and if you have a suspend function, we can only call it from a Kotlin coroutine scope. So this live data has a direct support with the Kotlin coroutine scope. It says that the live data scope, which is also of a Kotlin coroutine scope, is implemented using a Kotlin coroutine scope. That's why we have a live data scope over here. So for that, I will just say val data, sorry, it should be of a val. Let's say our data is equals to this should be a register repository, and a register repository dot register. And when we want to call that function, we have to pass this as an argument. And finally, this live data will emit some data. So whenever we are getting data from the register repository that register, this is returning some data. If you go back, this will return some data. So if you go to the network service and its response, so it's returning a response of a register response. So in order to get that data, it will emit some data to our live data. So for that, we have to make use of one function here, emit. It will emit the value. So the value will be this data, it will be emit out. So we are getting a live data over here. So the live data will emit the value that we're returning from our network service, which is of register and of a register response. So if you go to the register view model, its live data scope has a response of a register response. So that's it for, we have already created a function, and the next step is to make use in our UI. So in a register activity, we can just call this function. So let's meet up in the next lecture, and in the next lecture we'll go and work with our login view model.